Hey everybody, OperationZ here, and I'm going to be going over Abraham's story throughout several parts. And we're going to start out here in Genesis 12:1. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will shew thee. So we see here that God calls Abram to leave his homeland where he's at, to follow the Lord's instructions, to go to a new land that God will show him. And the first question we should ask is, who is Abram? Well, Abram is basically one of the descendants of the sons of Noah. Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And see, we all come from descendants of Noah after the flood, which is before this text comes about. It's a little bit before this in the story of Genesis. But Abram is a descendant of Shem through that genealogy and that lineage. He comes from that lineage. So he's a descendant of Shem, and the name Abram means father of greatness. And eventually we'll get into Abraham, and he gets that name change, and the change in the meaning of his name goes to Abraham, which means father of many nations. But we'll get more into that as time goes on and as we travel through this storyline of Abraham's life and his story. So the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land I will shew thee. So in the land that he's at and he's dwelling in, there they worship many gods and so on and so forth. And one day God, the one true God, just calls to him and seeks him out. And then we see what Abraham does, or Abram at this point, as we continue on. Genesis 12:2, And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So we see that he has this promise here that he'll make of Abram a great nation. He said, I will bless thee, that his blessing will be upon Abram, and he'll make thy name great, and he shall be a blessing, that he'll be a blessing onto others. So we see that continuing on in verse 2 here. We see that make of him a great nation, and he'll be blessed. And we see this promise of God, and so far that's all we see. But as the story goes on, God reveals more to Abram about what his will is. So Genesis 12:3, And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So there is a blessing for all of those who choose to bless Israel. Right now it's just Abram, but it becomes Israel, which is it's Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. And Jacob he becomes Israel, and he's the father of the 12 patriarchs and the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who blesses Israel and chooses to do good by them will be blessed and prosper and have abundance. Anybody who curses and goes against Israel will have the Lord's curse upon them, and they will not prosper, and they'll fail. So it's good to always have Israel on our mind, and it's good to help them out and do good towards the Jewish people, because they are God's chosen people as the first chosen. And we're all God's people and God's chosen people. But Abraham was who his promise was originally for. Here in Genesis, we see going through Genesis 12, And it says right here, I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So we see that promise that God has right here for his people. And again, for all people, because all people can believe and have faith and come to God, and all people can be the Lord's. That we have that adoption by the Spirit, that we can all be God's. So Genesis 12:4, so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So he dwelt in the land of Haran, and he was 75 years of age when he left from there, when God called him. See, Abram was actually a prince among his people, and he had the best of the things that he can have. You know, he was actually pretty prosperous compared to most at that time, and he was considered as a prince amongst his people. But God called him for his purposes, and we see that he obeyed God's calling. So he departed as the Lord spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. Lot was his nephew, and Lot went along with him with his wife and his family. And we end up getting from them the children of Ammon, and we get the Moabites that are descendants of Lot, which when they split from Abram, it ends up causing issues later on in Israel, that they're always fighting with the Moabites and the children of Ammon, as well as other inhabitants of the land that was around about them. And over time they conquer, and you know, in David's day there was always fighting in the land until Solomon's day, and then there was a great peace so the temple could be built. We have that. But back to topic and where we are right here, I just wanted to throw that information in as I'm going here. But we see here that Abram has went on this journey, and he's obeyed the Lord's voice courageously and faithfully. That he didn't say, well, I don't want to go. I'm not going to trust this, which this was the first time God appeared to him. He might not have even known it was God that was speaking to him, but he just heard the voice, and he knew it was a God, but he didn't know that it was the Most High God that spoke onto him. But nonetheless, he obeyed the voice and the calling, and he went and did the Lord's purpose. You know, and I'm sure his brethren and his father didn't want him to go, but he listened to the voice of his God. And that was accounted to him for righteousness with his faith. So, Genesis 12:5, and Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So they went and dwelt in the land of Canaan, as the Lord showed them to. And if we read that again here, Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. So that's just talking about servants that Abram had at that time. And they all left from Haran, and they went forth and dwelt in the land of Canaan. That's where they came to. But Genesis 12:6, and Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, onto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And see, in the land of Canaan, there was more than just the Canaanites. There were Canaanites, which gave Israel a lot of trouble at certain points, the Moabites and the children of Ammon, as I've mentioned. But there were also the Jebusites and the Hittites and the Hivites and all these different people that were there. But that's the message for today. And we're going to continue on to part 2 with the next sermon. But you all have a blessed day.